When you think of MMORPGs that define the genre, what games come to mind? Is it games like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, RuneScape, and Final Fantasy XI? Each one is fondly remembered by MMO veterans for the various systems that other games would draw inspiration from. However, there is one MMO that released around the same time period, Ragnarok Online. It was an MMO I always saw advertised online as a kid. Its anime art style and graphics looked awesome, but unfortunately I completely missed out on it since it required a monthly subscription at the time. Nowadays, Ragnarok Online is basically dead, with people really only talking about how awesome the game used to be versus how it is now. Well, the creator of Ragnarok Online did develop another game, which is the subject of today's video, Tree of Savior, a free-to-play MMORPG released in 2016 by IMC Games. Tree of Savior was touted as the spiritual successor of Ragnarok Online, namely because the game's lead developer was Kim Hakyu, the same lead developer credited for Ragnarok, so Tree of Savior had quite a bit to live up to on release, which may or may not have succeeded. For me, Tree of Savior allured me with its really unique art style and graphics, the same way Ragnarok Online did way back when I was a kid. So I figured I'd give Tree of Savior a try and see what I might have missed all those years ago. So is Tree of Savior worth checking out? Let's talk about it.
กงล้อแห่งโชคชะตาเริ่มหมุนจุดเริ่มต้นของหายนะกำลังอุบัติขึ้น Tree of Savior
Tree of Savior has two platforms you can play the game on. The easiest and most populated server is the Steam version, only requiring a Steam account and downloading the game to play. The second option is the Papaya Play version. Apparently, the Papaya Play server has significantly less players and is a few versions behind. So for the purpose of this video, I played the Steam version. Anyways, once you download the game and get logged in, you'll be brought to a server list and then character creation. Character creation begins with your choice of the 5 starting classes, being Scout, Swordsman, Archer, Wizard, and Cleric. Selecting each class will give a breakdown of how each one plays to give you a better idea of their playstyle. You'll also get various options in hairstyle, skin, and outfits for customization. Finally, name your character and hop in game, which begins with an intro cutscene setting up the game's story. Tree of Savior's story begins with a catastrophic event in which a giant tree begins to grow and engulf the world. Its roots spread everywhere, destroying cities and spawning dangerous monsters whom humanity struggles to fight against. You are visited by the goddess of fate, whom tells you to stop this invasion or the world will come to an end. At least that's what the story is supposed to be, because the intro cutscene, at least for me, kept breaking when the goddess would try talking, forcing me to quit out of the intro cutscene. Not a great start.
Oh, that's terrible.
Also, apparently there used to be a choice between 2 starting cities, and the intro cutscene would change depending on what city you chose, but from what it looks like, that's been removed. After the intro cutscene, you'll begin in the starting tutorial zone, where you'll be taught how to move, interact with things, fight enemies, and the various character progression systems. The tutorial area and the game in general has a very artistic graphical art style. Character models have a 2.5D style and have a very similar look to the classic Ragnarok Online sprites. The explorable world has the isometric camera angle similar to ARPGs, with zones being incredibly colorful and detailed. The graphics in general are just pleasing to look at. The art style is reminiscent of something like a painted canvas. Tree of Savior's soundtrack is also great, having tracks that capture feelings of the fantasy world. Tracks can go from invoking feelings of melancholy, as well as having incredibly upbeat tracks that make use of piano, guitar, techno, or violin, that sorta remind me of the bangers from Lateal's soundtrack. Tree of Savior's soundtrack in general is so well-rounded. I'd honestly have to say it's probably one of the better soundtracks in MMOs, but that's really only if you listen to the game's tunes as you play. Combat in Tree of Savior is an action combat system. Z attacks with your main weapon and abilities or spells can be mapped to your hotbar. Bosses will have the traditional telegraphs to let you know to avoid certain spots or to prepare for specific attacks. It's a simple, effective combat system that does flesh out as you gain more and more abilities as you level up and progress. Questing will be the main content you'll be trudging through in Tree of Savior in the beginning, with the main storyline quest granting the most amount of experience. The main storyline quest spans a total of 17 episodes, having hundreds of quests to complete. Unfortunately, the quests are very generic in a gameplay sense, usually just boiling down to your basic fetch and kill quests, and other quests typically just functioning as tutorials introducing a feature. You do occasionally fight bosses during quests, but until the higher levels, practically every single enemy you fight is a pushover, bosses included. Where you'll have a lot more fun during your journey to max level though, will be in how you can grow your character's power. Tree of Savior has various progression systems, modeled in a way that has you feeling like every single thing you do matters towards your character in account's overall progression. First off is the character level, which maxes at a whopping 540. Every level up will boost your stats a small amount. Then you have your class level, which maxes out at 15 for your base class and then 45 for your other choices, which grants a skill point each level up that can be spent in your class's various abilities, which each point powering up said skill you choose. Each skill also has attributes that can further power up or change how a skill works, requiring attribute points, which are typically earned from various content or earned with in-game money. Tree of Savior's class system is pretty robust in how you can customize how you play. When you begin, you choose your base class from the 5 choices I mentioned in the beginning. Once you reach level 15 in that class, you can choose an advanced class that corresponds to your base class. Once that advanced class that you chose reaches level 45, you choose another advanced class up to a total of 3, essentially creating your own custom class from the 4 you chose. This adds a ton of customization to combat and how you play. Of course, unfortunately, in a freeform system like this, there are meta builds and choices that are completely useless, as well as pay-to-win classes that can only be unlocked through avenues like the cash shop. Still, I always appreciate open customization systems like this. Of course, equipment also influences your character's power, with equipment having systems that can enhance or enchant the items to add additional stats or perks. The card systems are something I'd probably also lump into equipment, since it's basically extra stat sticks that you can level up and equip to further customize your build. The card album allows you to equip cards you earn from various content, which usually represent various characters in the game or bosses. Then you have monster cards called assisters, which are these summonable monster familiars. You start earning these monster cards when you unlock the minigame for them, which is this pseudo RTS type mode. Pets add further stats to your character, but is unfortunately locked behind a gacha style loot box. More on that later. The biggest progression system in the game though is by far the achievement/adventurer journal. The journal in Tree of Savior essentially keeps track of everything you've done in the game and counts nearly anything you do towards an adventurer rank leaderboard. Achievements are earned from incredibly grindy tasks such as killing 1,000,000 monsters or consuming 10,000 potions. Each achievement completed earns you titles and achievement points, all of which grant extra stats and items. Your journal also tracks things like how many times you've killed specific monsters, how many item drops you've received, items you've crafted, quests completed, fish you have recorded through fishing, completed item collections, all of your character's levels. Literally everything you've done on your account is tracked with a score tallied that ranks you amongst other players. All of these achievements and completions grant you a ton of extra stats if you choose to put the time into completing them, but it is completely up to you whether or not you spend the time on the various activities required. I'm surprised more games don't have a system log like this that breaks down everything you do. In Tree of Savior, it gives incentives to play all the content within the game, even if you've out-leveled it. Social-wise, Tree of Savior has a fleshed out guild system with levels and perks. One of those perks being the guild base that has various content like guild raids, shops, buffs, or PvP. Aside from guild stuff in terms of social features, you have an auction house to trade items between players, player-owned housing, and then the player-owned services. So instead of player-owned shops, Tree of Savior has classes you can specialize into that offer a specific service to other players that you can charge for to make money. Services like food and spell buffs, temporary equipment enhancements or repairs, and gem enhancements to socket into your equipment. It's a pretty cool system that encourages players to provide a service on their alternate characters to make passive money. Player-owned housing in Tree of Savior is similar to games like EverQuest 2, where players can decorate their homes and have other players go and check out their creations. Hilariously, players are allowed to upload their own icons to represent their houses to encourage players to come and check out their creation. I mean, honestly, on the player system board, this would make anyone click.
Oh my.
Endgame has all of your basic modes of content like dungeons, raids, PvP, or social events like minigames. Getting to the max level can take quite a long time, but occasionally from what I've seen, the game does have events to help new and returning players jump into higher level content right off the bat with newer created characters. PvP has a team battle mode as well as a giant guild wars mode for bigger battleground type content. Unfortunately, the PvP does seem to be a bit limited, however. PvP can only apparently be entered during certain times of the day for their team battle mode, and Guild Wars only occurs when one guild wages war against another, which unless you are in a PvP focused guild, that isn't going to happen too often. I've been told by the player base that the PvP in general is largely imbalanced with players really only playing the few viable PvP builds. A shame because I do like PvP in MMOs when it's good. Endgame PvE has quite a lot of content to jump into. Dungeons, raids, solo content, dailies, pretty much all the usual content types, which can be a bit rough to get into as a new player, either because it will take a while to grind to max level, or once you do get to max level, you'll have no idea what you are doing. Luckily, the game does try to help new players ease into the game as much as they can by automatically having players join a guild when they create a character. You can join another guild, of course, if you don't want to be in the default TOS guild, but I recommend talking to other players and learning all the systems the game has to offer from veterans if you plan to play the game long term. And if you plan to play long term, then you'll probably want to know about the game's cash shop. So Tree of Savior is a completely free to play game. All the content in the game is free to enjoy from level 1 all the way to max level. The cash shop has all the normal items you'd come to expect: cosmetics, convenience items, loot boxes, a premium subscription, and more. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the only way to get these little pet things for extra stats is through these tickets that are obtained during events or can be just outright bought in the cash shop. To be fair, I never felt like I needed to buy anything from the cash shop when I played Tree of Savior. I'm sure that gets a little more prevalent at max level in endgame content, but until you get to raids or PvP, there's nothing I felt I needed to purchase, but I can't deny that there is some pay-to-win elements in the cash shop. I was actually kinda surprised at how much I enjoyed Tree of Savior. Everything I've read online tends to dump on this game, but if I'm being honest, I kinda liked it. Personally, I like grindy MMOs with long-term progression systems, so Tree of Savior was a nice little distraction for me. But unfortunately, the game has a really low population, about 300 or so players on a good day. At those numbers, I can see why people say the game is dead. I don't know though. I really liked the game's charm, but I would be lying if the game doesn't feel like it's on life support. If you like anime hardcore grindy MMOs like old school Ragnarok Online, then give Tree of Savior a shot, I say. It's free to play, and for what it is, it's a nice game to play on the side every now and then, but I'd struggle to really recommend it as a main MMO over the other games in the market right now. Anyways, let's wrap things up for Tree of Savior. For fans of the old school Ragnarok Online, or in general old school anime MMOs, Tree of Saviors scratches that itch, having some really beautiful looking graphics and environments. The character portraits alone have some absolutely gorgeous art. The game also has a really good soundtrack, with a lot of its tunes being incredibly catchy, having all sorts of genres sprinkled into its themes. The game is completely free to play, which is great for those who are looking to give the game a try before they fully jump in. And the game is very generous with free items that you would normally have to pay for. Customization wise, the game has a lot of class choice and variety, almost to the point of where there is too many class combinations. But if you are a person who likes to be able to theory craft various builds, then Tree of Savior is right up your alley. Unfortunately, the game has the same problem a lot of these free-to-play MMOs do, and that's pay to win. The cash shop in Tree of Savior, while not overly egregious, has items that will definitely grant you an advantage over players who do not spend money. Until you get to Endgame, where you can start doing more interesting content, Tree of Savior has a really repetitive quest grind that literally does not change. Right from the start, it's the main story quest and nothing else. Rarely are you ever given a side quest to break up the monotony of going from point A to B, which is a perfect summary of the game's quest progression. You literally are just trying to get from point A to B. It's basically zone after zone doing the same tasks until max level. Along the way, you'll also just find a lot of outdated mechanics and systems in the game that can be just sort of confusing. For example, any equipment you loot from enemies is literally useless because of the equipment you start with that can be leveled with you all the way to endgame. Finally, the game just has a really low population. At the most, you'll see a high of 300 players on most days. Chat tends to be fairly quiet unless you speak first, and it all just makes the experience feel, unfortunately, lonelier than it should be. And that is my thoughts on Tree of Savior. Apparently, it was a very different experience at launch than what it is now, for better or worse. It is a bit of a shame that the game doesn't have a bigger audience, because there is a lot to like here. Sadly, it seems like Tree of Savior did not have the same explosion in popularity that Ragnarok Online did, which was basically lightning in a bottle. Anyways, are you playing Tree of Savior? Comment below and let me know. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel to support my content. Follow all my social media links in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.